This is One Sentence News, a daily podcast featuring 3 news stories with a sentence-long summary and 1 sentence of context apiece. I'm Colin Wright. This is a sponsored message. I've been using Anchor as my podcast host for a while now, and it's been a pleasure to use. Anchor offers benefits that most other hosts do not. It's free to use, but it also has a collection of tools that allow you to create a podcast completely within the Anchor website or smartphone app. They distribute your show to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other distribution channels without any additional effort on your part, and you can make money from your podcast without any minimum audience size. So you can use it as a more traditional podcast host like I do, but it's also got everything you need to start a podcast from scratch. If you're keen to give it a shot, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. It's Wednesday, October 19th, 2022. Let's talk about the news. From France 24, protesters march in Paris as fuel shortages add to anger over inflation. Tens of thousands of people marched through Paris last weekend to protest inflation and high energy prices in particular. French security forces used tear gas and batons against the protesters, and some of the politicians who helped set up the march have called for a general strike. About 90 countries have seen protests in response to high energy prices since January of 2021, and many more have seen broader inflation-related protests. Quite a few of these events have been overtly political in nature, though some have been the consequence of genuine frustration and rage, without any obvious political orchestration behind them. There's been violence, usually from government forces, though sometimes from protesters as well, or groups that march with the protesters but mostly show up to rob or pillage, as was the case with masked vandals and a bank during the Paris protests. And some protests have been facets of larger issues, as has been the case in Sierra Leone, where food scarcity has been a real problem, and Haiti, where they've got a serious energy crisis, but it's the result of a government that doesn't really function, and gangs that have taken over ports and prevented the shipment of fuel and food throughout the country. From Axios, Iran's Evin prison fire leaves at least 8 dead and 57 injured. A well-known Iranian prison that houses hundreds of prominent political dissidents, activists, and journalists, among other people the government doesn't like, caught fire over the weekend. 8 people have been confirmed dead, and 57 people have been confirmed injured thus far. Hundreds of people who have been arrested during the ongoing protests against the Iranian government have been thrown in Evin prison, where allegedly there's a great deal of torture and where people are often subjected to long, isolated periods of imprisonment. According to the government, the fire was sparked during a fight between prisoners, but Iranian state TV has said it was part of a premeditated escape plan, while prisoners have told reporters that none of the inmates were responsible for the blaze. And from Deutsche Welle, Germany extends lifetime of remaining nuclear plants. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has announced that all 3 of the nuclear power plants the government intended to shut down before the end of 2022 will instead be kept running until mid-April 2023 to help the country cope with a possible winter energy crunch. There's a significant shortage of natural gas in Europe right now because the area typically relies on Russian gas to provide much of their energy, and neither side of that relationship is keen to deal with the other at the moment. Nuclear power stations are not popular with some facets of the German Green Party, which doesn't consider them to be clean or renewable energy because of their expense and the waste they produce. But nuclear power does provide steady, reliable energy, and thus tends to blend well with intermittent sources like wind and solar. Consequently, the head of the local Green Party has said he accepts this extension for now, though members of the German Free Democrats Party are hoping to keep them open till 2024. If you're finding some value in One Sentence News, consider leaving a quick review wherever you get your podcasts and/or sharing the show with a friend. You can find out more about this show or subscribe to the email version at onesentencenews.com, and you can support this and other related projects like the Let's Know Things and Brain Lenses podcasts at understandery.com.